Hey folks, Seth Mayo here, Curator of Astronomy for the Lohmann Planetarium at MOAS, and glad to be with you again for another edition of our Sky Tonight. And for this program, we are covering the sky from June 8th through June 14. And summertime is knocking at our doors. It's about to begin. The summer solstice, the official beginning of summer, is on June 20th. So we are just about there, getting pretty close in these summer months here. And let's get to it for our sky this week. So what I'll do is something a little differently for the program right now is I'll talk a lot about objects that form what are called asterisms, shapes that you can easily find in the sky that are not officially constellations. So to talk about that, let's slide into the evening sky. Let's kind of move to the west to watch the sunset. And this week the sunset's between 8:21 and 8:23. Just depends on what night you are watching the sunset in the western horizon. And sunset won't get anywhere past about 8:26, and then it will dip below that as we get further into the summer months. So you may kind of notice that if you look at the sunset times, it'll kind of top out at 8:26 and then start to fall below it as we get, again, a good distance past the summer solstice. So for now, around 8:21, we will set that sun and make it nighttime. All right, so let's go. Actually, we'll go a little later for this session. Maybe we'll go to about, we'll go into about 11 o'clock. You don't have to be at this time to see everything I'm talking about, but for what I want to mention, I can kind of keep everything in the sky at the same time. 11 o'clock will work for us. Okay, so we're looking around here and seeing all these lovely stars, and one thing I always tell people, look for the brightest stars first in the sky and kind of figure out those, and then kind of go into the dimmer, more obscure stars if you feeling up to the challenge. So many people know the term constellation. A constellation is a picture made by the stars, and constellations are actually more official. They're designated areas of the sky, because when people think of constellations, they think of these lines, these drawings, and only the pictures, right? And I can turn on the artwork for constellations. These can date back thousands of years ago. Many of them are from Greek mythology. Some of them are from scientists over the years and explorers and navigators. But many of them are from Greek mythology, from antiquity. And so originally they just meant these pictures made by relatively bright stars in the sky. And then in 1930, what's called the International Astronomical Union decided to confirm 88 constellations for both the northern and southern hemisphere into these regions called Constellation Boundaries. So now a constellation actually means a boundary area of stars, even if the star in the boundary doesn't actually form the picture. So if we look at this great spring constellation here, there's Leo the lion. You notice the stars of Leo right here. I always say it looks like a broken clothes hanger. But then notice stars in here and here. This is in the boundary of Leo, and these are considered Leo stars. But they are not part of the picture, but they're considered Leo because they are in Leo's boundary. That was decided upon a while ago. So that's actually officially what a constellation is. They're officially these designated areas of the sky. The constellation, the picture still is part of the what makes the constellation, but the stars in the boundary are also part of it as well, as you can see there. You can see all these different constellations with their different boundaries and their pictures as well. All right, so those are constellations. Now, the other shape that I want to really kind of talk about in this edition of the show here are things called asterisms. So these are less official. They're not recognized all around the world. A lot of times they're regional, and they are very easy to spot shapes in the sky made by the stars. So they're not designated areas. Sometimes an asterism can consist of multiple constellations. And just to start, I'll begin with the two most famous asterisms that everyone knows. If you go to the north, I've already mentioned this before a couple times. If you look in this area that I'm circling, you may notice already this is the Big and Little Dipper, right? Here's the handle of the Big Dipper. There's the bowl. And then there's the Little Dipper. There's the handle. And there's the bowl. So those are the asterisms. So many folks think, and I don't blame you because that's what I used to think too. These are the constellations, the Big and Little Dipper, but they're actually part of constellations. Big Dipper is part of Ursa Major, which is the Great Bear. Let's put all the constellations back up. And we'll see the bear. So see the Big Dipper inside of it? That's actually the rear end of the bear, and the handle is the tail. There's Little Dipper, handle, and bowl there. So that actually consists of the whole constellation. But the Big Dipper doesn't. There are more stars in Ursa Major. So those two dippers are asterisms. And just as a reminder, the Big Dipper points to the North Star Polaris, which is at the end of the handle of the Little Dipper. So those are very famous. Of course, in the north, there's our North Star. So that's the northern part of the sky. And let's talk about some other asterisms. You may have seen the stars, maybe you don't know the names of the pictures of these asterisms. So one I'll show you is a little bit lower at 11 o'clock at this time of year is a spring constellation right here. I just mentioned it. I talked about Leo the lion, right? But if you look in the head of Leo, you'll find this kind of almost looks like a pirate's hook, I like to say, or a backwards question mark. That is called the sickle, almost like a farmer's tool that cuts grass. That's the sickle shape. So I like to use that as a marker to help me find Leo the lion's head. And this star at the bottom of it, that's the star Regulus. That's a pretty bright spring star. Multiple star system means little king, the name Regulus. So that's a fairly popular asterism in the spring. Now continuing with the spring stars, and don't worry, I will show you the pictures in just a bit here. I'll just trace them out with my mouse at first. So another one I like to show you is something called the spring diamond. And that also has a star that is associated with Leo, except for the tail star. So the tail of Leo is a triangle right here, right triangle. At the end is a star called Deneb. And so that star Deneb is one of the corners of the diamond, the spring diamond. We have a star that's really bright right here. This is Spica. All right, and then even brighter, the brightest spring star, if you move up in this direction, this is called Arcturus right here. And Arcturus is easily found if you use the Big Dipper's handle. You can arc with the handle to Arcturus. And some people say spike or shoot to Spica. I like spike to Spica, like that. So again, we go from Deneb to Spica, Arcturus, and then one more star, this star in a very small constellation called Canis Venatici. It means the two dogs. And there's a star here called Cor Coroli. So I didn't really click on the stars. There's Deneb, Spica, Arcturus, Cor Coroli. Hey, nice diamond shape. That is the spring diamond. So I like that one. I think it stands out. And still this time of year, even though we're getting close to the summertime, you'll still have a while to see that. Even with the head of Leo being the sickle, the asterism we call the sickle. All right, now let's move over to, so that was more towards the southwestern part of the sky, but now let's look to the southeast. And if we do that, southeast and even directly east, so I'll just kind of keep us focused on the eastern sky, we have all these summer stars beginning to rise. I've already mentioned one already a few times in previous episodes of this, and that is this big S shape here. This is Scorpius the Scorpion, but many people also consider this the hook, like a fisher's hook or the fisher's hook. And it kind of looks like it. Doesn't look like a big fisherman's hook right here. Yeah, so kind of works, for the summertime. People are fishing a lot, and it kind of fits with the season. But this is actually the body and the tail of Scorpius, which I will turn on for you. There's the bright star on Taurus, a red giant star. There's Scorpius's picture, and there it is, this giant, scary arachnid, except, Scorpion has a tail and a stinger. But you may notice the hook shape there, the fisher's hook. Not far from that, near the tail of the scorpion, or near the hook, kind of sharp end of the hook, if you will, you'll find these stars pretty low in the southeast by 11 o'clock at this time of the year, but you still have a chance to see it. If you stay up later, it'll be a little higher in the sky. This shape I actually I like quite a bit, and it's called the teapot. That's the asterism. So here's the handle of the teapot, the lid, and the spout. What I love about the teapot is, think of it as, you're making tea, and it's steaming out of it, right? And if you're in a dark enough place, the steam almost looks like, the Milky Way, or the Milky Way looks like the steam of the teapot. And so that's a pretty famous summertime asterism. That's actually part of Sagittarius, the archer, the half man, half horse, next to Scorpius, or the fisher's hook. So there's the teapot. That's a good one. Look out for that in the summer. And actually, between the teapot and the hook, the sharp end of the hook, this is the center of our Milky Way galaxy, the giant black hole that is at the center about 26,000 light years away. Now, sticking with summertime asterisms, move over here more directly east and a little bit to the northeast, and you may find yourself looking at 3 really bright stars in the summer, making a very big triangle called the summer triangle. That's nice. And these stars I'll definitely click on because they're really bright. At the top here is the brightest star of the triangle by far. This is Vega. Very, very famous star. A lot of movies like to use Vega in their stories. It's so bright, well known, relatively close to us, about 25 light years away. It's pretty good. Down here is a star called Deneb, which is pretty bright, but it's very, very massive and big star. It's a blue-white giant star. It could be a couple thousand light years away. That can vary depending on who you ask, but it's very far and still very bright. It tells you that's a very massive, actually very luminous star. And then this star here is called Altair. That's the head of an eagle. So that's part of an eagle. This is part of a harp called Lyra the harp. And this star, Deneb, is part of Cygnus the swan. And so I could turn on those constellations real quick. There's the harp, there's Vega, there's the swan, that's Deneb, and there is Altair, and that's Aquila the eagle. So there's the triangle. I'll put up their pictures too. But mostly I want to show you that summer triangle. There's actually another asterism in here. If you look carefully, you'll see inside that the constellation Cygnus the swan, it looks like a cross shape, and so some people call this the Northern Cross, since this is the northern part of our sky, or in the northern hemisphere at least, and so we can see this Northern Cross. So that's another asterism within an asterism. So we got asterisms stacked on top of asterisms, or within them. You can find all of them. So you can kind of get a sense of how these asterisms are easy to figure out shapes, because sometimes, to be honest with you, constellations can be quite difficult to figure out. They take a lot of imagination sometimes, and a lot of times look nothing like what they're supposed to be. So asterisms are a little easier way to kind of find stars, make simple pictures. Of course, you can make your own asterisms if you want. You don't have to think of these. But the summer triangle, the Northern Cross, the teapot in the southeast, the Fisher's hook also there and for the summer stars, that spring diamond that we found here, also the sickle of Leo, and of course the Big and Little Dipper are just really great asterisms to find at this time of year. And let's see if we can show you the pictures of them and the outlines of them, or at least the outlines and their names of the asterisms. We can turn that on. So this shows you a whole bunch more. Ones I think are a little more obscure, a little harder to find, but you'll find some of the ones I did mention. Big and Little Dipper. Sorry, here you go. I guess there's a mini dipper here, but anyway, Big Dipper, or the plow, some people say too. There's a Little Dipper. There's the sickle. May be hard to see this, but we have here the spring, or the great diamond here. Oh yeah, one other one I didn't get a chance to really mention is the spring triangle. That's another one too, so I missed that one, but that's okay. Now we're seeing it, but we got the diamond here. There's the fisher's hook, or the fish hook. There's the teapot. and Summer Triangle, and the Northern Cross. And again, you can see many more here in the sky. The Butterfly, Ptolemy's Triangle, that's a whole other one too. And then the heads of different constellations as well. Head of Centaurus. There's also the head of the Serpent. That's probably kind of have to do, or may associate with Hydra the sea snake, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, that Hydra is over here. But anyway, I guess there's another serpent head right there. And you have a few other ones. Dragon's head right there too. So anyway, so these asterisms, not official, not part of those designated areas like I mentioned earlier that constellations form, but they're kind of fun to find in our sky. Okay, now one last thing I'll do for you, because this is not all about asterisms here. One last thing I'll mention is if you do get up in the early morning or even stay up late, you'll start to see these planets rise. But I do want to say at the beginning of this week into like Tuesday morning, late Monday into Tuesday morning, the 9th, you'll see that the moon will still be very close to a couple planets. If you look to the southeast, there's the moon, and you can see it's a waning gibbous. This is Saturn and Jupiter, so that's nice. At the beginning of the week, they're pretty close if you get up early or stay up late. And then there's Mars down here. And if we go through the rest of the week here in the morning, real early, let's watch the moon. That's on the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, and by the 12th and 13th, the moon will be pretty close, near like last quarter, half full moon, to Mars. So that's nice. And then after that, the moon on the 14th on Sunday, as we cap off this week, the moon will move a little farther away and turn into a crescent shape lower down. So you can find that. So the moon will be kind of flying past these planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, in our late night or early morning sky. So maybe take a look at that. That's kind of nice. So, and then we'll just get the sun to rise here. We'll go a little quick here for another new day. And there you go. And there actually might be one more planet that we might see here. Oh yeah, Venus is coming up in the morning too. We saw it in the evening for quite a while. We talked about it for a long time, but now Venus is kind of shifted to the morning sky, but real close to the sun, so it may still make it hard to see in that area of the sky. But anyway, I wanted to mention that. Rise for the sun, and there we have it. So hopefully you enjoyed this session of the Sky Tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed taking a look at these things, or hopefully taking a look at them for real in the sky. There's nothing like it. And hope to see you again. We're going to continue doing these virtual online sessions of the Sky Tonight. It's been a lot of fun. So take care. Hope to see you again. And happy stargazing.